立法會
The President. Questions. Question 1. Dr. Ngan Man-yu. President, it has been reported that many youth with special educational needs (SEN) youth are facing employment difficulties. Regarding supporting the employment of SEN youth, will the government inform this council 1. Whether it has compiled statistics on data relating to the employment of SEN youth of various age groups in the past 3 years, including the employment rates, salary levels, job categories, academic background, and time taken for seeking employment, and analyze the comparison between such data and the corresponding data for youth as a whole during the same period. 2. Of the measures in place to support the employment of SEN youth, together with a breakdown of such measures by the government department concerned and stage of life development, that is studying, job seeking, early stage of employment and career development. Whether it has assessed and reviewed the effectiveness of such measures, including the division of work among different government departments and the relevant collaboration facilitating interfaces, if so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And 3, whether it has considered joining hands with enterprises in different sectors of society to establish a platform supporting the employment of SEN youth, to encourage enterprises to create employment and internship positions suitable for SEN youth, thereby enabling them to learn and apply the skills in the actual working environment and lay a solid foundation for their smooth integration into the employment market in the future. If so, of the details, if not the reasons for that. Secretary of Labor and Welfare. In response to Dr. Ngan's question, having consulted the Education Bureau and the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau, our reply is as follows. 1. The government does not compile statistics on the number of youth with special educational needs (SEN) in employment of different age groups. As regards the number of school leavers with SEN from 2021 to 22 to 2023 to 24 school years, the number of secondary sex school leavers with SEN were approximately 3,700, 4,200, and 4,200 respectively. Among them, the number of those being employed by November of the next school year was approximately 200 per year. The majority of the rest continue to study locally. From 2021-22 to 2023-24 school years, there were 513, 548, and 572 S6 graduates in special schools respectively. Among them, 14, 25, and 38 were employed in September of the next school year. 175, 152, and 164 pursue further studies, including vocational training. 148, 200, and 213 received vocational rehabilitation or day training services. Based on the information provided by students from individual post-secondary institutions, from 2021-22 to 2023-24 school years, there were some 2,900, 3,600, and 4,200 students with SEN enrolled in the UGC-funded and non-UGC-funded full-time locally accredited sub-degree and undergraduate programs respectively. As regards the number of employed youth with disabilities, from 2022 to 2024, Selective Placement Division (SPD) of the Labor Department recorded 2,412, 2,406, and 2,300 placements respectively. Among them, 874, 794, and 762 placements involved young with disabilities aged 29 or below respectively. Regarding support at schools, the EDB requires ordinary secondary schools to assist students with SEN in choosing suitable pathway for further studies and careers through life planning education, and to provide students who will soon graduate and their parents with guidance in further studies and careers. A website is also set up to provide information. EDB also works with different business corporations through the Business School Partnership Program to provide students, including those with SEN, with diversified career exploration activities. Special schools design school-based curricula such as community training, workplace practicum, and pre-vocational training for students to nurture their independent living skills and provide additional training such as interviewing skills, vocational skills assessment, social etiquette, work attitude, etc. based on students' individual abilities. The HYAP and Youth Development Commission implement a funding scheme for youth life planning activities to subsidize non-government organizations (NGO) together with secondary schools in organizing life planning projects such as thematic talks, workplace visits, and job attachments. The scheme gives priority to projects that are designed based on the needs of designated groups of students, for example, students with SEN. In school years 2022 to 25, the HYAP has sponsored 26 NGOs in collaboration with over 400 secondary schools, including 13 special schools and 5 schools for social development. Regarding post-secondary institutions, UGC has provided additional funding of $76.5 million through the special grant for enhancing support for students with SEN for universities to take forward 3 key objectives: 1. Improving the educational experiences of students with SEN, enhancing staff training, and 3. Promoting an inclusive campus. They cover activities helping students to join a community and develop their careers in the future, and to make early preparation for their way forward upon graduation. In relation to vocational and professional education and training (VPET), the VTC adopts a whole school approach to assist students with SEN, including providing additional teaching staff to conduct academic guidance, tutorial groups, and individual coaching to enhance their learning skills more effectively. The LWB subsidizes the Shine Skill Centers under the VTC to offer vocational training programs and ancillary services to PWD, including SEN youth aged 15 or above who are assessed as having potential for open employment. For PWD who are not able to take up open employment, including SEN youth, the SWD subvents NGOs to operate sheltered workshops, integrated vocational rehabilitation services centers, integrated and vocational training centers, for providing vocational rehabilitation and training services. On support for job seeking, the SPD of the LD provides employment services, including employment counseling, job matching, and referral to job seekers with disabilities, including SEN youth who are fit for open employment. The SPD also implements the work orientation and placement scheme, under which eligible employers engaging each job seeker with disabilities is eligible for a maximum allowance of $60,000 during the 9-month subsidy period. The SWD also subvents NGOs to provide supported employment training. The relevant funding and service agreement states that organizations are required to provide services such as job attachment, job training, and counseling. In addition, employees returning board provide around 70 dedicated courses that assist persons with disabilities in entering or re-entering the employment market. Trainees who complete placement-tied courses will be arranged with placement follow-up services for 6 months. 3. Since 2013, the LWB has launched a talent-wise employment charter and inclusive organizations recognition scheme to encourage organizations of different sectors to adopt measures to promote internship and employment of PWD. The CE announced in the 2024 policy address the introduction of the Caring Employer Medal, commending employers engaging actively PWD. In addition, the SWD implements the Enhancing Employment of PWD through Small Enterprise Project that subsidizes NGOs to set up small enterprises to directly create more employment opportunities for PWD. The LD will continue to liaise with employers from different industries to enhance their understanding of the work capabilities of PWD and the way to get along with them, and to provide suitable job vacancies for PWD. Dr. Ngan Man-yu. There are subsidies in relation to making adaptations to the workplace to enhance the work efficiencies for PWD. The maximum allowance for each PWD is $40,000. Will the government continue to expand the scope to allow employers to purchase support services such as employment support services and management training in the workplace, covering both hardware and software, to help PWDs, including SEN youth, to help them better integrate into the workforce? Thank you, Dr. Ngan, for your question. We'll continue to take stock of the existing measures and subsidy schemes. We'll continue to work on this. In relation to SEN youth as well as youth with disabilities, apart from hardware support, oftentimes it's not just about money. Colleagues need to understand how they can get along well with these young people. For SEN youth or for youth with disabilities, they don't want to be cared about by other colleagues. They don't want excessive care. We'll continue to work with NGOs to provide more support to enterprises so that they will take on more youth with disabilities. Ms. Doreen Kong. Thank you, President. Studies point out employers in society misunderstand SEN people, or there is insufficient understanding. Some worry the workload might increase. Some are also worried that they may not be able to get along well with SEN people. Some may worry that SEN may be dangerous. Will the government work on public education so employers and society have a better grasp of SEN youth and SEN people so that employers will be encouraged to take on SEN employees? Secretary, thank you, President. Mr. Ren Kong's suggestion is indeed very good. We spend tens of millions of dollars on public education, and we will introduce the Caring Employer Medal. We commend employers who actively engage PWDs, including SEN employees. We will make good use of this opportunity. As Mr. Ren Kong said, there may be misunderstanding in the community. There are also success experiences, however. We want to let more people know SEN youth are very talented as well. If you can turn them into good account, you can help your company, and you can also help young people to realize their potential. Ms. Rebecca Chen. Thank you, President. The SWD has a scheme to encourage employers to engage different PWDs or SEN youth, and the number of SEN or PWD engaged shouldn't be over 50% of all the employees in the workplace of a company. Will the government enhance efforts in this regard in order to play a leading role? Indeed, the SWD has achieved success with the scheme. There are a total of 140 schemes receiving subsidies, each receiving up to $3 million tops, including vegetable wholesale, retail, ecotourism, and so on. At least half of the employees engaged need to be PWDs. This scheme has created a total of 1,430 jobs, including 1,000 positions dedicated to PWDs, accounting for 70%. However, if we want to further increase the ratio, we'll have to take into account the viability. We'll monitor the situation, and the ratio at present is as high as 70%. Mr. Martin Lee. Ms. Jofi Chen, what question hasn't been answered? Well, please clip your microphone onto your lapel. Just now, my question was whether the administration would employ SEN youth or PWD in order to lead by example. Secretary, any supplements? Thank you, Ms. Jofi Chen, for her question. We have our employment arrangements. Within the government, we engage PWDs or SEN youth as well. Under the CSB, there is an internship scheme for PWDs. It was launched in 2016. Between 2016 and 2018, some 100 students have had internship opportunities in the government. So far, there have been 752 taking part in this internship scheme. This can enable PWDs or students with disabilities to work in the government earlier. Mr. Martin Lee, the government has a charter to take on SEN youth. That is the Talent-Wise Employment Charter. As at last December, there had been 700 organizations taking part in this scheme or signing the charter. Some organizations point out there are subsidies provided by the government. That is under the Work Orientation and Placement Scheme. Most SEN youth find it difficult to work in their position for over 1 year due to the arrangements. So how does the administration monitor the application process? Will enhancement measures be put in place to ensure the continuity of the positions for SEN youth? President, thank you, Mr. Martin Liu, for his question. I understand members concerned about the Work Orientation and Placement Scheme, the WOPS. That is how many SEN youth can continue to work in their positions after joining the scheme. For a 9-month subsidy period, employers can receive maximum allowance of 60,000. In the 13th month, how many SEN youth will continue to work in the position? Statistics show 43% of the SEN youth will stay in the position, and 70% of the SEN youth will continue to work. If SEN youth or PWDs identified positions suitable for them, they are very loyal. They will continue to work for their employers for a long time. Mr. Chu Kwok-kang, the government has implemented inclusive education for a long time. Upon graduation, SEN youth fail to find a job. They lack job matching services and employment support services. So I'd like to know whether the administration provides support services so that SEN youth can realize their potential and they can also give full play to their strength. This way they can enhance the likelihood of employment. Secretary, I'd like to ask the Undersecretary for Education to respond. Thank you. I'd like to respond to Mr. Chu. As a member mentioned, we have different business school partnership programs to help students to plan well their life. We help students to explore different career prospects. Apart from helping students, we can also help enterprises as well as the business sector. They will have a better idea of SEN youth and SEN students. That is how they can contribute to their companies. In the past 5 school years, over 4,500 attendances took part in over 200 business school partnership programs. From the perspective of the Education Bureau, we will continue to encourage enterprises and schools to take part in the business school partnership programs. This will allow students to explore different jobs, and this will also enable employers to have a better grasp of SEN students and SEN youth. Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, President. We have been implementing integrated education for a long time. Many SEN students are actually studying in mainstream schools. The employment of SEN students is close to my heart. We only handle the problem upon graduation. Actually, over 50% of students manage to land a meaningful job if we start the support services at the secondary school. As regards QF courses, can the LWB and the Education Bureau work together to promote QF courses to secondary schools? Can we start from secondary schools? We may provide support earlier at the secondary school level. If we could provide better support to SEN students, then we could have solved a lot of problems. Over $2 billion of funding has been provided to the QEF. We can achieve synergy between VPAT and traditional education in order to help ASEAN students to secure a job. Which public officer will reply? Undersecretary for Education. In relation to making better use of the fund, there are over 20 consultative panels. Different course organizers can apply with the QEF, Quality Education Fund, to create courses. They can organize courses for students to have a better and in-depth understanding of the development of different careers, be they mainstream schools or special schools. They work with different organizers to provide courses linked to the QEF or the QEF framework, that is the qualifications framework. The aim of implementing life planning education at schools is exactly to help ASEAN students to know better society. This will help them plan their life, make decisions about careers, and they will also be able to understand the development of different industries through career exploration. Thank you.
Man-yu.
Question 2, Ms. Carmen KAN. President, to declare interest, the organization that I serve is a financial institution and is bounded by the banking ordinance. Regarding prevention of personal data breaches and financial crimes, will the government inform this council, 1, of the number of data breaches incidents that were notified by the institutions to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data, Hong Kong PCPD, and the number of those that were detected by PCPD through proactive investigations in each of the past 6 years, the number of incidents involving data processors, and the number of persons affected in these two categories of incidents respectively. 2. It is learned that PCPD and the government are studying amendments to the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, including, among others, establishing a mandatory personal data breach notification mechanism, introducing a direct regulation of data processors, empowering the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data to impose administrative fines. But this ordinance is not on the list of bills which the government intends to introduce into this council in the 2025 session. Of the progress made and the legislative timetable for the relevant exercise, and 3. Given that the government plans to amend the banking ordinance with an aim to allow the sharing of information among authorized institutions on customers, accounts, and transactions for the purpose of preventing and detecting financial crimes, and the government indicated in this paper submitted to the panel on financial affairs of this council in October last year that PCPD has provided its comments on the amendments of the government strategies and measures in place to ensure that the amendments are in line with the PCPD's comments while also addressing the surge in a number of fraud cases. Secretary for Constitutional and Mainland Affairs. President, in response to the inquiry raised by Ms. Carmen KAN, having consulted the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data (PCPD), the reply is as follows. In the past few years, the number of personal data breach notifications received by the PCPD and data breach incidents uncovered by proactive compliance checks were relatively stable, amounting to around 100 cases per year in total. The number witnessed a rising trend up till 2024 to 217 cases. Among those breach incidents, around 10% of them involved malpractice of data processors, and the number of affected persons varied depending on circumstances of individual cases. The relevant statistics may be found at Annex. 2. In light of the rising trend of personal data breach incidents in recent years, the government and the PCPD are both deeply concerned about the issue. The PCPD has adopted a multi-pronged approach to tackle the situation. On one hand, updating relevant guidelines and strengthening promotional and educational work, and on the other hand, strengthening enforcement work and studying amendments to the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance (PDPO) to combat the situation. With regard to education and publicity work on data security, the PCPD has implemented a series of measures on the following 3 aspects to raise organizations' awareness in protecting personal data so as to help organizations reduce the risk of personal data breaches. 1. Providing data security tools to support the industries, including launching a one-stop thematic webpage on data security, establishing a data security scanner for organizations to evaluate their security level of their data security measures, introducing a data security hotline for receiving inquiries from the industry, publishing data security guidelines including guidance on data breach handling and data breach notifications, and guidance note on data security measures for information and communications technology. 2. Strengthening collaboration with the industry, including organizing training talks for organizations to promote data security management and data security seminars for the public, educational sector, and nonprofit organizations. Collaborating with the Cyberspace Administration of China, the Hong Kong Police Force, the Digital Policy Office, and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority to organize or participate in seminars and activities relating to data security and handling of data breach incidents. And organizing the privacy-friendly awards to complement organizations' outstanding achievements in personal data privacy protection. And 3. Organizing various promotional activities, including arranging mobile exhibition vehicles to conduct publicity in the community for Privacy Awareness Week 2024 under the theme of Safeguard Data Security, Safeguard Privacy, introducing Data Guardian, a data security mascot, publishing articles in Chinese and English newspapers, online media, and professional journals to explain to the public and the industries the importance of data security. Meanwhile, the PCPD will also strengthen its enforcement actions. Upon confirmation that the relevant data breach incidents involves contravention of the PDPO's data security principles, the PCPD will, as appropriate, issue an advisory letter or a warning letter to the relevant data user or serve an enforcement notice on the organization directing it to take appropriate remedial measures to prevent reoccurrence of the situation. If the organization does not implement relevant measures in accordance with the enforcement notice, such contravention under the PDPO will constitute an offense, and the maximum penalty is a fine of $50,000 and imprisonment for 2 years. With regard to the study of amendment to the PDPO, the PCPD has earlier conducted a comprehensive review of the ordinance, and its preliminary amendment suggestions include 1. Establishing a mandatory personal data breach notification mechanism, 2. Directly regulating data processors, 3. Requiring data users to establish a personal data retention period policy, 4. Strengthening sanctions and empowering the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data to hand down administrative fines. 5. Clarifying the definition of personal data, etc. On the suggestions, the PCPD consulted the Personal Data Privacy Advisory Committee and the Standing Committee on Technological Development last year and listened to the views of different sectors. One of the major concerns of the industry was the strengthened sanctioning powers, and especially their effect and pressure on small, medium, and micro enterprises under the current difficult economic situation. The government fully understands the concern of the industry. As such, the government is studying on how to appropriately adjust the legislative amendment proposals, for example, whether to effect the legislative amendments by phases, thereby reducing the possible effect on the business sector, and how to suitably determine the amount of administrative fines, ensuring that they are set at an acceptable level while not losing deterrent effect. The government is striving to complete the study and come up with concrete amendment proposals as soon as possible, and will consult the LegCo so as to amend the PDPO as soon as possible to further protect the personal data privacy of residents. 3. To combat fraud and other financial crimes, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority, Hong Kong MA, issued a consultation document in January 2024 proposing legislative amendments to the banking ordinance to allow sharing of information among banks of information on customers' accounts, including personal accounts, for the purpose of preventing or detecting crime. The Hong Kong MA received 18 responses during the consultation period, including comments from the PCPD. The government plans to include specific provisions in the amendments which stipulate that banks can share personal accounts information only when there is reasonable suspicion that the personal accounts may be involved in fraud, money laundering, or terrorist financing. Banks will be expected to ensure that the relevant requirements are met in each case and be able to demonstrate the grounds on which the decisions are made. In addition, the legislative amendments will also include, among others, requirements for banks to keep shared information confidential and to have adequate systems and control measures in place. Subsequent to the briefing for the Financial Affairs Panel of the Legislative Council in October 2024, the government is currently drafting the legislative amendments and will continue to engage the PCPD and other stakeholders to ensure that a balance is struck between fighting against financial crime and safeguarding personal data privacy in the legislative amendments. Thank you, President. Ms. Carmen KAN. President, there are a number of universities students that fell victim to scams, and this has sparked discussion in the community. Should we learn from places that implement shared responsibility mechanism so that banks, media will take up shared responsibility or shoulder the loss? There are views saying that upon amendments of the banking ordinance, the sharing information mechanism will be implemented, and this will help enforcement agencies intercept funds to minimize loss. When this mechanism is implemented, will the financial institutions be deemed to be shouldering this shared responsibility? I wonder if the banking ordinance can be amended as soon as possible. Before the amendments, is there any control measures in place for the financial institutions? Undersecretary for the Financial Services and the Treasury. President, I thank the member for a question. On the timetable for the amendments of the banking ordinance, as mentioned, last year, we briefed the panel on financial affairs of the LegCo, and we had the support of the members. Currently, we are talking to the stakeholders, including the banks and the PCPD, to look into the amendments before we come up with the finalized amendment proposals. We will table the relevant proposals as soon as possible to the LegCo. On this shared responsibility framework mentioned, it means that the loss that resulted from scams are shouldered among different institutions, such as telecommunication companies and banks. If these organizations or institutions haven't fulfilled their responsibility, then they have to shoulder the loss. However, if these institutions have fulfilled their responsibility, then the consumers or customers themselves have to bear the loss. There are already measures in place that are similar to the shared responsibility framework. Take e-banking as an example. As long as the customer has properly kept their e-banking devices and they have done their due diligence, then they don't have to bear any loss resulted from unauthorized transactions. I hope that the member understands now the current situation in Hong Kong. As said, we will speed up our legislative amendments. Mr. Xiu Ka-fai. Well, there are two reasons for data breaches. First, some deliberately leak their data. Some mistakenly have their data leaked. Currently, there are already offenses in place targeting the first scenario. For companies that were hacked by hackers and have their data stolen, I think that we have to increase our penalty on such act. Also, I think that we should step up education and publicity on how institutions or schools can prevent hackers from hacking into their computers. Secretary. Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Xiu for his concern and question. As mentioned in my main reply, on the protection of personal data, The PCPD and the government work tirelessly on this. Over the years, we try our best to ensure that people's data are being protected. In light of the recent rapid technological advancement, challenges arise for the protection of personal data. And we see that there is a rising trend in terms of personal data breach incidents. Because of this, we have to review our current practice to see how we can enhance personal data security. Currently, we rely on promotion and publicity, guidance notes, guidelines, and remedial measures. We want to enhance people's awareness on data security. Given the rise in the number of data breach incidents, we think that we need to enhance the deterrent effect of our penalty. That's why in our amendment proposals, we try to mandate the data breach notification, and we're planning to raise the penalty. This may impact the industry. That's why we must be careful. We will look into the legislative amendment to see how we can strike a balance between protection of personal data and development of our city. Now, in terms of publicity and promotion, we've been stepping up our efforts in this regard, and we've been working with the PCPD on training, promotion, and online training courses for organizations and companies. We will later consult the LegCo before we formulate the finalized version of our amendment proposals. Mr. Robert Lee. The government amended the banking ordinance to prevent financial crime. The industry has told us that some customers have their bank accounts frozen. Banks choose their customers, but some industry practitioners told us that while they ask what measures there are to make sure that there is no negative impact caused to the industry while the sharing of information mechanism is in place, so that we can protect the personal data of the customers while the banks can provide a normal service to their clients. Undersecretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. Thank you for your question. We must strike a balance between development and regulation. For financial institutions that are conducting business legally, they will not be affected. There is currently a mechanism to detect high-risk transactions. Let me give you an example. Say, for example, under the Anti-Deception Coordination Center, there is a 24/7 interception mechanism. Also, there is a scam alert scheme. There are 28 banks that are participating in the scheme. If they are able to identify suspicious transactions, they will notify the victims. Over the past 11 months, we have stopped 2,000 customers from transferring funds to potential scammers. First, we have to ensure that there is normal financial services and they will not be disrupted. Second, we will remind the banks that as they are engaging or conducting risk management, they should provide fair services to their customers, and we will try to strike a balance. Mr. Chan Chen-ying. Thank you, President. In the annex to the main reply, according to the statistics, there is a rise in the number of data breach and incidents uncovered by proactive compliance check. It means that enforcement actions are effective, but in terms of number of cases involving data processors, the number is not that high. It seems that the PCPD is not regulating the data processors well. According to the main reply, legislative amendment will be here to regulate data processors directly. But prior to the amendment, can the PCPD step up proactive compliance check? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for the question. If you look at the statistics, it's true that the data breach incidents uncovered by proactive compliance check is low. That's because the number of cases involving data processor are not substantial. They account for only 10% of the total number of cases. Data processors are professional. They should be able to protect the data under the purview well. We don't find it ideal that there's a data breach incident involved. That's why we will step up publicity and promotion, and we will offer guidelines and guidance to the data processors. We're going to amend the ordinance to directly regulate data processors in order to minimize the risk of data breach. Thank you. Mr. Dominic Lee. Thank you, President. I think that a lot of cross-boundary institutions are involved in data breaches. How can we step up enforcement action against these cross-boundary organizations? Secretary. Thank you. If we detect any cases, we will send or issue advisory letter, warning letter, or serve enforcement notice to make sure that the organizations comply with the rules.
Question 3, Honorable Dominic Lee. Thank you, Mr. President. It's been reported that the application of robots and artificial intelligence (AI) technologies have become increasingly popular in recent years, particularly in service industry settings such as hotels and restaurants. The views that Hong Kong should make forward planning and formally related policies. In this connection, will the government inform this council? First, whether it has revealed if there are issues pertaining to restrictions on the application of robots and AI technologies under existing laws and regulations, including restrictions on the operation of robots in public facilities, such as access to lifts. If there are, whether the government has plans to amend the law to address the related issues. Second, whether it has reviewed the actual effectiveness of the existing Innovation and Technology Venture Fund and other funding schemes in promoting the introduction of robots and AI technologies by small and medium enterprises and startups. Whether it has assessed if the government needs to optimize and increase dedicated funding to support the application of the related technologies in the service industry. If it has, of the details, if not the reasons for that. And third, as there are views that the application of robots and AI technologies may involve issues such as privacy, ethics and labor rights, whether the government will draw on the experience of the mainland Europe and the USA and formulate concrete specifications and guidelines as to strike balance between technological development and the needs of the community. If so, the details and the timetable. If not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Innovation, Technology and Industry. President, in respect of the question raised by Honorable Dominic Lee, having consolidated the information provided by the Development Bureau and the Constitutional Mainland Affairs Bureau, my reply is as follows. First, the development of artificial intelligence, AI, and robotics is originally intended for the benefit of mankind. At present, there is no specific legislation in Hong Kong to regulate the application of robotics. However, projects must comply with the applicable legislation involving the relevant sectors or scenarios. We encourage developers in the market to be flexible and innovative and to provide technological solutions that meet the needs of different users, such as a wide range of smart solutions. Regarding the application of robotics that Honorable Lee is concerned about, the Lifts and Escalators Ordinance Cap 618 itself does not restrict the access of robots to lifts. In line with the above-mentioned general principles of innovative research and serving the people, if the application of individual technologies is restricted by existing legislation, the relevant bureaus departments will actively explore the necessary adjustments based on a people-oriented approach. Second, the government has all along attached great importance to the development of robotics and AI technologies. We've established 16 research centers under the AR at Inno-Hong Kong Research Cluster, which focuses on the development of AI and robotics technologies. AIR at Inno-Hong Kong brings together top talents from around the world to promote innovative research, technology transfer, and the application of AI and robotics technologies. In addition, the government has proposed to set up a $10 billion innovation and technology industry-oriented fund, which will include AI and robotics as one of the thematic areas of emerging and future industries of strategic importance to channel more market capital to promote the development of AI and robotics industries. To further accelerate the development of new industrialization. The new industrialization acceleration scheme launched last year also provides funding support on matching basis to enterprises of industries of strategic importance like advanced manufacturing and AI to set up new smart production facilities in Hong Kong. It also enhanced the new industrialization funding scheme to strengthen support for local manufacturers shifting to advanced manufacturing, so as to promote the development of the I&T industry. Third, AI is the brain of robots, giving them cognitive, learning, and decision-making abilities, while robots are the manifestation of AI. Most of the moral and ethical regulations relating to AI are applicable to robotics technology projects. For example, our ethical AI framework and its revised version in response to the development of generative AI technology have covered the ethical principles, governance framework, and risk assessment of AI, providing guidance on the application of relevant technologies. As for the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, it provides for the collection, holding, processing, and use of personal data. The Office of the Privacy Commissioner for Personal Data has also published the guidance on ethical development and use of AI and the artificial intelligence model personal data protection framework, to provide recommendations regarding the governance of AI and the protection of personal data privacy, with view to assisting public and private organizations in complying with the relevant requirements under PDPO when they develop, procure, implement, and use AI systems. On the other hand, the government has commissioned the Hong Kong Generative AI Research and Development Center under the Inno-Hong Kong Research Clusters to study and suggest appropriate rules and guidelines on generative AI technologies through practical application. We will continue to improve the policies with view to balancing development and regulation of robotics and AI, and embracing the opportunities and challenges brought about by human-machine collaboration. Honorable Dominic Lee, according to the Secretary's reply, in relation to the regulation of the use of AI, we are relying on the guidance on ethical development and use of AI, as well as the protection framework, and as well as the ethical AI framework. But then they're not adequate. We have more and more use of AI. There will be more and more legal and commercial disputes arising from the use of AI. There may even be criminal acts. Now, according to the reply, it is said that according to your reply, you are saying that you don't want to stifle innovation by over-regulation. But then it is said that without appropriate regulatory frameworks, then people would be put off from investing heavily in Hong Kong in this regard. So how are you going to strike a balance between the two concerns? Secretary, in relation to the framework to support the development of AI and robotics, we always say that regulation and development should go hand in hand. Now we talk about the guidelines and the rules and regulations. We are watching the development closely, and we will be updating the rules and regulations in due course. As I have said, in relation to generative AI, there will be guidelines soon, and we are moving with the times. But then, in fact, we have already got rules and regulations that can apply in the field of AI and robotics, and we will be keeping up a dialogue with the relevant fields and sectors. Professor Wong. Well, in June, I think the PCPD office has published the guidance on ethical development and use of AI and the artificial intelligence model personal data protection framework. How many organizations have already adopted them so as to incorporate them into their manuals, and how you're going to help the SMEs to enforce the requirements under the framework and how they can really practice the good practices. Secretary, in my main reply, I have already said that the office of the PCPD published the model personal data protection framework as well as the guidance. They have already made reference to the international best practices, and as to the and they will be feasible and they will be workable. 450 organizations, public organizations, government departments, as well as enterprises from different sectors, accountants, lawyers, etc., as well as the IT sectors, they have taken part in the exercise, and there are workshops and seminars to explain to the community as to what is expected of them, and they have been told about the practical solutions. And in fact, on different platforms, in different media, we have also published articles as to what should be done to protect personal data. I want to say that whether the government, the community, or the individuals, we do give priority to the protection of personal data. In fact, as early as 1996, 95, we passed the Personal Data Privacy Ordinance, the first in Asia, so as to enforce and enhance personal data protection. So we do have a very good record. We'll continue to watch the development of AI and robotics in relation to protection of privacy. Well, we know that it is important to use AI, in particular AI Plus. We want to apply them in industries like the financial services industry as well as the traditional industries where we have an edge. So when it comes to AI development, will the government develop policies to tie in with our industrial development so that we can rely on our advantages? Secretary. Well, in fact, you can see that for the development of AI, the government does take it very seriously. You can see that for the past few years, we have been launching a number of measures, like we have the supercomputing center, and we have also got other schemes, and we have the INT zones, we have the Inno-Hong Kong research clusters, and we have got 6 departments that are applying the models. So through the generative AI circles, we have been introducing many enterprises taking a foothold in Hong Kong in relation to AI and robotics. We have got 1,000 enterprises that are in the field of AI and robotics. I think the development will go on, and then for data-related policies, we talk about data governance, and we would also like to promote the idea of sharing data as well as policies concerning the transboundary move or transboundary flow of data. I think all such will give a solid foundation to the development of AI. For AI as an industry, I think we need to do a lot of groundwork, and in fact, we have been working at the level of hardware, and this will facilitate AI development. Today, Mr. Lee talked about AI and robotics technologies, and the two are bundled together. I think it is very meaningful. Mr. Chen, in relation to the ethical implications when we use AI, I think it is important, but again, we mustn't be over-regulating, otherwise the development will be stifled. In his main reply, the Secretary said that Hong Kong Research Cluster has got the Hong Kong Generative AI Research and Development Center, and that center has been asked to study and suggest appropriate rules and guidelines on generative AI technologies. Well, I&T moves very quickly. So does the government have a clear timetable? If not, why not? Secretary, currently, for AI and robotics, the development is such that it is at a very high speed. In the past few years, we had a high-speed stage, and in fact, in the coming years, we will be having robotics being combined with AI. Now, in relation to I&T talents, in relation to the infrastructure involved, they are important for the development of this field. Well, we have the I&T industry-oriented fund. And we have always said that AI and robotics will be one of the thematic areas. So as far as funding is concerned, you don't need to worry. And in fact, in future, there will be more industrial development so that we can move up to another level. Mr. Chen asked for the timetable. I'm not too sure what he is going after specifically, but then from basic research, midstream development, and the downstream product development, we are working hard. We know that there are many projects closely related to AI, and that's the basic research. And then for midstream, we have over 20 projects under the Race Plus scheme. And in fact, we have also got the new industrialization acceleration scheme. We have received quite a number of applications. Quite a large number of them are related to AI and robotics. I'm sure the government is working very hard to do this. Now, when we carry out regulatory work, we mustn't forget about development. We have a new president in the USA, and in fact, they are going to remove all the restrictions on AI. That's what the Trump administration is doing as the first thing in his government. I'm sure regulatory work will not be allowed to stifle the development. Well, in fact, Mr. Jeffrey Lam, we know that our life has been much facilitated by the use of AI and robotics. On the mainland, robots have been deployed to take away food to the consumers. But then we do see problems. Robots may go past public areas, and there will be security concerns and fire safety issues. If robots are blocking the means of fire escape, or if robots are blocking people, what will happen? And if they are allowed to cross the boundary, there will be further issues like the risk of moving contrabands, or there may be other security loopholes. So what is the government going to do to address such issues? Secretary, as I have said in my main reply, I think whenever we have technological development, the main idea is to work for the benefit of mankind. As to the actual applications, and whether they will be affected by rules and existing legislation, I'm sure government departments will be people-oriented to look at the question of regulation. In December 2024, we had 4 items of revision. We said that motorists can use remote control to park their vehicles, so that in this way, we can encourage the use of new technologies. I believe that revisions of a similar nature will be upcoming because robotics and AI will reach to all the households in Hong Kong. And so you will have something similar to that. So I'm sure with further sort of integration of robotics and AI, I think we will certainly have to look at the risk. Now, AI gives thinking ability to robots. In the past, robots could not carry out independent thinking. So we have to be clear from the outset. Well, the original intention is to benefit mankind and to seek development and progress of our civilization. Now, AI is very strong and it will make great use of data. And therefore, we emphasize data safety, data security. And we have to emphasize the moral sort of hazards. As we have said, we at a Belgian Road Forum, our national government has also published a statement concerning the use of AI, and we have also got the moral, or rather the ethical AI framework. Also shows our determination to guard against the risks. Dr. Lo Wai-Guang, as to the ethical issues, it isn't just a matter of privacy. For generative AI, the products may be misused or abused, claiming that it is a creation by the person making such a claim. So I'm sure we have to come up with the provisions to guard against that. I want to know the following. I want to know whether there is a timetable to guard against such plagiarism, and whether you have been talking to universities to make sure that you can strike a balance. On the one hand, you can promote creation. On the other hand, you can well in advance stop the improper use of AI. As we have said, the Hong Kong Generative AI Research and Development Center will be working hand in hand with the government to study and suggest appropriate rules and guidelines on generative AI technologies through practical applications. An announcement will be made soon. So in this way, we can answer the questions asked by Dr. Low today. On the other hand, I have to point out that all around the world, and many countries are developing AI and robotics, and everybody is trying to escalate to the next level so that we can be stronger than before. We will consider striking a balance between development and regulation without allowing over-regulation to stifle the development. Which part of your question hasn't been answered? I want to know about the timetable for the rules and guidelines to be published. The Secretary is merely repeating his earlier answer. Can he be more specific about the timetable? Secretary, as I have said, for generative AI, we will be making an announcement in a few months' time. Well, for Mr. Yu, I think he talks about the service industries in his question. I'm referring to the question asked by Mr. Dominic Lee. Well, in fact, robotics and AI can be applied in other traditional industries as well. Now, the government has got the new industrialization funding scheme. It is hoped that traditional industries can be assisted and facilitated in upgrading and transformation. Do you have any specific funding schemes to help the tourism industry to upgrade? Secretary, well, we support the use of AI and robotics in all sorts of sectors and industries. There are different scenarios, and I'm sure the tourism will be given priority. Take a look at the mainland. They have rapid developments of technology. This is because they are willing to cover all sorts of scenarios. In Hong Kong, we have been applying AI in different developments, like 1823 and our chatbots, our medical service, or the examination or tests and investigations on websites. I'm sure the relevant AI and robotics applications will one day arrive in the tourism industry. I'm sure there can be many application scenarios.
Question 4, Dr. TIK Chi-yuen. President, it has been reported that the government's fiscal deficit for the current financial year will be as high as $100 billion. However, it is stipulated under Article 107 of the Basic Law that the government shall follow the principle of keeping the expenditure within the limits of revenues in drawing up its budget and strive to achieve a fiscal balance. In this connection, will the government inform this council? 1. Given that according to government information as at 30th November last year, the government's fiscal reserve stood at $591.4 billion, which had substantially reduced by almost half when compared with that of 31st of March 2020, $1.1603 trillion, whether the government has set a safety line for the fiscal reserves, if so, of the response plans in case the fiscal reserves drop to the critical level. 2. As it has been reported that as at previous financial year, the government had issued bonds amounting to over $200 billion, and it will also issue bonds not exceeding $500 billion in the coming 5 years. While the government has indicated that there may be room for upward adjustment of the ceiling of the amount of bond issuance depending on the circumstances, whether the government will set an ultimate ceiling so as to avoid triggering debt crises as a result of the total amount of debt substantially exceeding the GDP. And 3, as it has been reported that the expenditure on civil service remuneration accounts for 25.98% of the government's operating expenditure, whether the government has considered freezing or reducing civil service emoluments, merging civil service grades, or streamlining the organization structure, as well as reviewing the remuneration of senior officials, in particular politically appointed officials. Secretary for Financial Services and the Treasury. Thank you, President. Our reply to the question is as follows. 1. The government has all along been upholding the principle of keeping expenditure within the limits of revenues in drawing its budget. We strive to achieve a fiscal balance, avoid deficits, and keep the budget commensurate with the growth rate of the GDP to ensure the resilience and sustainability of our public finances. During the pandemic, the government launched several rounds of large-scale counter-cyclical measures to support enterprises and members of the public. The implementation of anti-epidemic measures also led to a sharp increase in expenditure. These measures, though successful in stabilizing the economy and safeguarding people's livelihood at the time, have led to fiscal deficits and a drop in fiscal reserves. As a small and externally oriented economy, Hong Kong is inevitably susceptible to the influence of a complicated and volatile external environment. While revenues related to the asset market will still require some time to fully recover, the government has to keep devoting resources to strengthen the growth momentum and enhance public services. That is why we have a deficit budget for this financial year 2024-25, taking into account the net proceeds from the issuance of government bonds. The latest projected consolidated deficit for 2024-25 will be under $100 billion. The government is determined to overcome the challenges facing our public finances. In the 2024-25 budget, we propose to implement a comprehensive fiscal consolidation program, which seeks to narrow our fiscal deficit progressively and restore fiscal balance in a few years' time. Given the current economic and fiscal circumstances, we are actively considering enhancing our fiscal consolidation efforts to further contain expenditure growth. These include requiring government departments to reassess their resource allocations and what priorities and better meet the needs of society through reallocation of resources. As to the appropriate level of fiscal reserves, there have been different views in society. Some think the more the better when it comes to fiscal reserves. Some think the government should not keep excessive social resources and should enhance economic efficiency through market forces. as our fiscal requirements will change alongside continuous development of our economy and society. We consider a fixed benchmark or limit for the level of fiscal reserves is not desirable. Meanwhile, we consider the current level of our fiscal reserves adequate for meeting the day-to-day operation of the government. The Financial Secretary is now formulating the 2025-26 budget. The levels of revenue, expenditure, and fiscal reserves will be reviewed in the light of the imminent and long-term needs of society. This will enable us to strike the right balance and draw up relevant measures and financial arrangements to ensure the sustained and steady development of our economy and society. 2. The government has made the issuance of government bonds a financing option for infrastructure projects. Taking into account the pace of development in respect of the Northern Metropolis and other projects, the government announced in the 2024-25 budget its plans to issue bonds worth about $95 billion to $135 billion per year from 2024-25 to 2028-29. The actual size of bond issuance will be subject to various factors such as the prevailing fiscal position, market situation, and works progress. In May 2024, the LegCo passed a resolution on the setting of a borrowing ceiling of a total of $500 billion for the government's sustainable bond program and the infrastructure bond program. Any adjustments will require the approval of the Legislative Council. The issuance of government bonds on an appropriate scale will further foster development of the bond market and the implementation of infrastructure projects. This is in line with the practice of many advanced economies. The government will maintain government debt at a prudent level. According to the forecast given in the 2024-25 budget, the ratio of government debt to GDP will range from about 9 to 13% during the period from 2024 to 25 to 2028 to 29, which is much lower than most advanced economies. The Financial Secretary is currently formulating the 2025-26 budget. He will look into the scale and forms of bonds issuance for the next few years. 3. For pay adjustment in respect of politically appointed officials and civil servants, having consulted the Civil Service Bureau and the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau, we give our consolidated reply as follows. The Chief Executive and Council will thoroughly consider 6 factors according to the established mechanism in deciding the civil service pay adjustment. The 6 factors include the state of Hong Kong's economy, changes in the cost of living, the net pay trend indicators, the government's fiscal position, the pay claims of the staff side, and civil service morale. The government has been strictly controlling the civil service establishment and since 2021-22 has contained the overall civil service establishment at a level not exceeding that as at end March 2021, that is about 196,000 posts. And the civil service establishment will reduce to 194,000 posts as of end March 2025. Bureaus and departments have been enhancing efficiency through reprioritization, internal redeployment, work process streamlining, and leveraging on technology to take forward policies and initiatives in phase with the increasing workload. The existing remuneration package for politically appointed officials was set in accordance with the mechanism and recommended and submitted by the Independent Commission on Remuneration for members of the Executive Council and the Legislature and officials under the political appointment system. As mentioned just now, we are actively considering enhancing our fiscal consolidation efforts to further contain expenditure growth. The Financial Secretary is currently formulating the 2025-26 budget and will review the fiscal consolidation program, including proposals on expenditure cut. Dr. TIK Chi-yuen. My questions were about fiscal deficits. We have been having fiscal deficits for a few years. With this situation, how the government manages the fiscal reserves is very important. And how we handle debts is also very important. We shouldn't rely on borrowing money to survive. Is there any room for cutting the pay to civil servants so as to save public money? The Secretary's reply is quite fake. They did not say specifically how we can do better to tackle the problem of fiscal deficits. So I want to ask the Secretary whether the deficit is a structural one or whether it is a short-term one. I want to ask what he thinks. Regardless of it being a transient or a structural deficit, will you have short, mid, and long-term solutions to make sure that you can explain to the public we are dealing with a problem? Secretary, as we said on multiple occasions, we have all along been relying on Article 107 of the Basic Law to manage our fiscal position, and we have always been prudent. Even now, we have a deficit, and we have been discussing this. In fact, a few years ago, we already were talking about fiscal consolidation, and in last year's budget, we had a series of measures that are in 3 areas. First, we are trying to develop new sources of revenue. We are now charging the hotel accommodation tax. We also introduced for the rating regime, we now have a step regime. And on costs, we have already been asking government departments to cut 1% of their expenditure. So it has not started today. We have all along been monitoring the situation. If necessary, we will promulgate different measures to tackle the problem. On revenues and costs expenditure, we have already been doing something, as we said earlier. And on the issuance of bonds, our purpose is clear. We will only use it for investment in infrastructure projects. We will not use the issuance of bonds, the money that we get, to pay our expenditure. We have been telling members and the public this all along. So with these 3 areas, we have all along been working in these areas to tackle the problem of fiscal deficits. Member, so please rest assured, we have always remained prudent. Mr. Tang Fei. The Secretary has explained quite clearly for government expenditure and payment to civil servants what his stance is. Now we are talking about how we can alleviate the deficit situation, or how we can reverse it even. Are we going to focus on some expenditures that are larger, or are we going to have a broad brush approach when cutting expenditure? With last year's budget, the largest expenditure would be on infrastructure. It is a 20% increase from the years before, and we also have social welfare, education. These are the 2 main areas, and also housing, 3 areas that would have increased. So I want to ask, is it the case that you would have a broad brush approach with cutting expenditure, or are you going to cut the larger expenditures? Thank you. Secretary. Thank you, President. When the Financial Secretary formulates a budget, he would always be comprehensive. We would consider broad brush approach. We would also review some individual policy areas. So with individual departments, measures, or portfolios, or general expenditure, especially with recurrent expenditure, we may do something. We have all along adopted a multi-pronged approach. Like last year in the 2024-25 recurrent expenditure, every bureau would need to cut 1% of their expenditures so as to enhance efficiency. That was one of our directions. And on infrastructure projects, we have been looking to issue bonds, and as said earlier, this is for investment in infrastructure projects. And we have asked the relevant departments for works projects they must reprioritize so that we are putting the resources to good use to match the needs of society. Simply put, we have macro and micro measures. We have some measures for general work as well as individual projects. Thank you. Professor Lau Chi-peng, we have seen for different departments, they would often seek funding approval. And today at the meeting of the Public Works Subcommittee, we are seeing a project that is over $10 million, actually $10 billion. And we have also seen some projects being upgraded as well. So has the government reviewed some of the items that can be pushed back a little so that we can only spend the money on them when we are less tight in our fiscal position? Thank you. Secretary. I think the member's observation is quite correct. We have been asking policy bureaus and departments to review their expenditure in different portfolios, especially on public works. We have quite a large expenditure on infrastructure projects. It's amounting to $90 billion in most years. So this is definitely a large expenditure. So we have asked departments to really look into projects to see if we can push back a little and to reprioritize, basically. I think the members' concern, and I will make sure that departments will actually allay concerns of members of the public by explaining the situation more clearly. Dr. Janice Ho, the Secretary said there would be a what % cut expenditure, but isn't that a bit too prudent? Elon Musk has been talking about huge cuts. If you're also relying on the departments to cut expenditure, would they do anything? You always need someone to do the dirty work. I can assure you, I don't think they will do much. You need to go top down in order to make sure this is implemented. You need to be more ambitious. Would you consider that? Thank you. Secretary. Well, let me clarify something. For the expenditure cut, as I said earlier, we require departments to cut 1% expenditure. It has already been cut based on the logic, because based on members' logic, it is a top-down decision because this was communicated from the top down, and this expenditure has already been cut. As I said earlier, we go through different levels. We would try latitudinal. We will also try longitudinal. We have also taken a macro as well as a micro perspective to achieve fiscal prudence. Thank you. Mr. Tony Tse. President, I have looked at the IMF's information. Japan's debt to GDP ratio is 250% and Singapore is over 170%. And the highest that we have will be 13%. So that is quite low. So I want to ask, actually I want to say first, we have relatively short periods for the bonds. Why do we have such short terms? What does the government expect with the settlement of the bonds as well as our interest burden? What is the government's expectation expectation? Thank you. Well, the longest term that we have for bonds would be 20 years. When determining the terms of the bonds, we would have reference to several factors, including market interest as well as our settlement obligation. And recently, the IMF came to Hong Kong to discuss some provisions, and that would be on Article 4. That is, we are being assessed in terms of our financial viability and stability, and they made the assessment that we are quite stable as an economy. As I said earlier, with bond issuance and the terms of bonds, we have had reference to the market situation as well as our own position. That is the approach that we have taken all along. Thank you. Mr. CHAU Siu-chung. Whenever there is a deficit, we often talk about cutting pay to civil servants. I disagree with that because that means we will lose civil servants, and we may suffer a loss as a result. If we have the pay to civil servants cut, we may have pay to other sectors, public and private, cut. Would that even be harder to tackle the fiscal deficit problem? Thank you. Secretary. As I said in my main reply, with civil service pay adjustment, it is different from the mechanism for politically appointed officials. 6 factors will be considered. That is the state of the economy, the changes in cost of living, etc. We have all along followed this mechanism and considered the 6 factors. In the next civil service pay adjustment exercise, we should follow the established mechanism.
Question 5, Mr. CHAU Siu-chung. The government launched the Top Talent Pass scheme at the end of 2022. It has been reported that some of the persons admitted to Hong Kong via this scheme have been unable to find jobs matching their academic qualifications or professions and thus have remained unemployed or have only been able to take up lower-level posts, giving rise to the problem of underutilization of high-caliber talents. The authorities have pointed out that they will play a stringent gatekeeping role for each application for extension of stay, and the terms of employment of applicants must be commensurate with their academic qualifications. In this connection, will the government inform this Council? 1. Of the respective numbers of applications for extension of stay received, approved, and rejected so far, together with a breakdown by the 3 application categories, the average vetting and approval time for approved applications, as well as the reasons for rejecting applications. 2. In respect of cases of approved applications, of the following information, set out by the 3 application categories, on persons employed in full-time jobs, the major industries and occupations in which they are engaged, the average duration of employment, the highest, lowest, and median amounts of monthly salaries, and the respective numbers of persons with a monthly salary below $20,000, between $20,000 and below $30,000, between $30,000 and below $50,000, and of $50,000 or above. And 3. Whether it will consider making public the specific requirements for vetting and approving applications for extension of stay, including the income levels of applicants, the business turnovers of the companies set up by applicants, etc. If so, of the details, if not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Labour and Welfare. President. Concerning question parts 1 and 2, in face of the widening manpower shortage, the government has been implementing various talent admission schemes with different positioning to proactively draw talents with diversified backgrounds to come to Hong Kong to fill the local job vacancies and enrich our talent pool. Among others, the Top Talent Pass scheme, or TTPS, launched in end 2022, seeks to attract individuals of different professions with high income or full-time bachelor's degree from top universities or institutions to pursue developments in Hong Kong. The eligibility criteria of the TTPS are concise and clear, and the required information and documents are relatively straightforward. Eligible talents are not required to have secured offers of employment in Hong Kong before applying for visas through the TTPS to explore opportunities here. Yet they, upon expiry of the first visas, will have to be employed or have established or joined in business in Hong Kong so that extension of stay can be granted. The scheme has received enthusiastic responses since its launch. As at the end of December last year, we received over 116,000 applications and approved near 92,000. Of these, more than 75,000 talents arrived in Hong Kong with their families. The government has been keeping track of their situation and providing them with diversified and pertinent support through the Hong Kong Talent Engage or HKTE. It not only assists them in adapting to life here, but also co-organizes with different parties job fairs for employers and talent to be directly engaged in job matching. While trawling for talents, the government also focuses on retaining talent. The 2024 policy address has thus set a key performance indicator of approving at least 50,000 visa extension applications annually for talents from 2025 to 7. However, it takes time for talents and the local job market to acclimate, which is a normal interactive process. Whether a talent can ultimately be granted an extension of stay or chooses to stay in Hong Kong for development depends on his or her own conditions and other different factors. The role of the government is not merely to provide the necessary support for talents, but also to continue the efforts in boosting the economy and the growth of emerging industries so as to provide a favorable environment for the development of local and overseas talents. This would provide concrete support for the establishment of an international hub for high-caliber talents. The TTPS has been launched for just 2 years. The government is pleased to note that many talents have gradually embarked on their careers in Hong Kong. According to the follow-up surveys earlier conducted by the LWB, more than half of the incoming talents have been in employment, mainly taking up managerial and professional jobs with median monthly employment earnings of about $50,000. The monthly employment earnings of about a quarter of the talents reached $100,000 or above. In addition, nearly 20% of their spouses have also taken up employment, mostly engaged in high-skilled jobs. Based on these survey results, the TTPS entrants and their spouses contribute directly to Hong Kong's economy. More than half of them are aged under 40, with many bringing the young children to settle in Hong Kong. This adds new impetus to the local labor force and brings about positive impacts on Hong Kong's demographic structure. The first batch of visas under the TTPS has just started to expire at the end of last month. The Immigration Department generally takes 2 to 3 weeks to complete the processing upon receipt of the applications for extension of stay and necessary documents. At present, only a small number of applications have been processed. There is insufficient relevant data for meaningful statistical analysis. The government will analyze the relevant statistics as a certain number of applications for extension of stay have piled up and release them at an opportune time. 3. Starting from the 1st of November last year, the Immigration Department allows persons admitted under the TTPS to apply for extension of stay 3 months before expiry of their limit of stay, so that applicants will have sufficient time to prepare the necessary documents for their applications. When applying for extension of stay, applicants are required to provide the Immigration Department with concrete supporting information and documents to prove either that they have taken up employment in Hong Kong with a stable income, or they have established or joined a business in Hong Kong. The specific requirements for assessing applications for extension of stay under the TTPS are set out in detail in the guidebook for TTPS and on the Immigration Department's website. The Immigration Department also avails of its social platforms, seminars and media briefings and so on to explain in detail the relevant requirements. The HKTE also disseminates relevant information through various channels. Applicants who have taken up employment are required to submit employment contracts, which should set out the details of the position, remuneration, other benefits, the employment period, etc. In general, the jobs secured by the applicants who are granted extension of stay should be at a level commonly taken up by degree holders, and the remuneration package should be at market level. If applicants are employed by non-local enterprises and assigned to work in Hong Kong under the intra-company transfer arrangement in managerial or professional positions, the applications for extension of stay will also be considered. The Immigration Department will take various factors into account when assessing the applications for extension of stay, including the applicant's remuneration packages, economic benefits, for example, tax paid, brought about by their work, and duration of their stay in Hong Kong, etc. For applicants who have established or joined in the business in Hong Kong, they are required to provide the proof of business, which should clearly show that the business is indeed operating healthily and sustainably in Hong Kong, with contribution to the local economy. In assessing an application, the Immigration Department will take into account various factors, including the operation and development of the business, such as the turnover, financial resources, investment sum, number of jobs created locally, economic benefits brought by the business, and duration of the applicant's stay in Hong Kong, and so on. The Immigration Department has all along been playing a robust gatekeeping role in ensuring that only applicants meeting the relevant requirements will be granted extension of stay. Thank you. Dr. CHAU Siu-chung. President, I'm disappointed in the Secretary's reply. In the main reply, he mentioned that only a small portion of applications for extension of stay has been received and there is insufficient data for meaningful statistical analysis. But my question was the number of applications received, granted, and rejected. This has nothing to do with the meaningful statistical analysis. Despite the small number of applications processed, why can't the government make public the data? If the government is refusing to make public these basic statistics, how can we be assured that the government will play a stringent gatekeeping role in granting extension of stay? Secretary. Thank you, President, and thank you, Dr. Chow. If you do a calculation, the TDPS began receiving application on the 28th of December 2022. The first applicant's visa will expire on the 27th of December 2024. We are now only in early January 2025. A really small number of applications have been received. If we tell the public the number of applications received, granted, rejected, and being processed, it will give rise to a lot of speculation. We want to avoid unnecessary debate. I ask the public to be patient. When we have more abundant statistical data, we can have a meaningful analysis. For example, at the peak, in the fourth quarter of 2023, it was the peak of arrival. On average, there were some 4,600 top talents arriving in Hong Kong. Compared with the first half of the year, when the scheme first began, it was only one-third of the figure. That is, some 1,500 arrivals per month under the scheme. The number gradually rose to the peak in the fourth quarter of 2023. It's not a leveled figure. That's why we would like to be prudent in analyzing and making public the data. We understand that there is great public interest in the figure. Please rest assured, when we think there is sufficient data, we will share it. Mr. Jimmy Ng. Thank you, President. Now about the extension of stay under TDPS. According to the website of the Immigration Department, it says if the applicant is out of job at the time of application, the application may be rejected by the Immigration Department. Now, if we reject applications based on this standard, this may go against our intent to retain the talents. So for applicants who are out of job on application, will the government refer these cases to the top talent engage to help match them with job positions in industries with manpower shortage? Secretary. Thank you, President. Thank you, Mr. Jimmy Ng. Of course, we would like the talents to stay in Hong Kong if they so wish. And in terms of job matching, the Talent Engage has conducted various online and offline job fairs to help secure jobs for the talents. But we have to be clear about one point. No matter how good a background the top talents come from, on application of extension of stay, if they are out of job and they don't have a business in Hong Kong, we can't simply allow an extended stay solely on their prestigious background, be it academic or otherwise. We allow top talents to come to Hong Kong and then pursue a career because we think it would be good for our economy. But the requirements for extension of stay is clear. That is, they must have a job or have a business in Hong Kong. That is very clear. This is an interactive relationship. We need the talents to prove their abilities before we grant them stay. Mr. Lam Chun Sing. Thank you, President. At present, the Immigration Department has an admission scheme for mainland talents and professionals. Now, the average income for talents under that scheme is 20 to 30,000 Hong Kong dollars per month. These are low-skilled jobs. Now, I worry that there is overlapping between the ASMLTP and the TTPS. Now, for the Top Talents Pass Scheme, the ASMLTF, they need to show proof of employment to the Immigration Department first. For the Top Talents Pass Scheme, the talents can bring along their families before even securing a job in Hong Kong. We don't want the TTPS to become a looser version of the ASMLTP. Now, if the job types taken up by top talents are highly overlapping with the other scheme, will the government tighten the scheme and ban top talents from taking certain jobs in Hong Kong? Secretary, thank you. The two schemes have very different positioning. They deal with different scenarios, so there is no overlapping. And we can't do a simple comparison between the two. Now, the ASMLTP is applied by employers, and there is no requirement on a university degree. Like the Top Talent Pass Scheme, talents under the other scheme can bring along their family members to Hong Kong if they have proof of employment in Hong Kong. For Top Talent Pass Scheme, we target graduates from top universities and with a high income. You can come to Hong Kong first before you find a job. The arrangement is different from that under the other scheme. Now, for the other scheme, the type of jobs are not specified. The only requirement is an application made by an employer in Hong Kong. So there is no overlapping at all. The goals of both schemes are to secure talents for Hong Kong and support our economic growth. Mr. Michael Look. Now, the TTPS is an important measure for attracting talents. Now, there are people who are worried about misinformation on Red Note or Xiaohongshu that you can simply pay a few $10,000 and get a pass. And there is also worry that it may bring down the wages of our local job market. Now, even if the students or the talents' academic qualifications are authentic, they may be willing to take up job at a lower salaries because they are still acclimating to the environment here, and that would bring down the wage of Hong Kong's job market. Now, the median income level is $50,000 per month, but what about the lowest 10 percentile? How much do they earn? Will the government consider the income level when considering granting extension of stay? Secretary. Now, we have to be fair with this scheme. It seems that we are overly obsessed with the income level of the talents under the scheme. In fact, everyone in Hong Kong earns different wages. Your salaries depend on your competitiveness, on the economic value you create for your employers. I understand why everyone is concerned, but there is a clear line. To be qualified for an extension of stay, the talents need to have a job or created a business. with an income level commensurate with local Hong Kong people with a similar academic qualification. The point is whether these talents can bring about economic developments in Hong Kong and whether they can replenish our high-quality productive forces. Also, integration is important. Both top talents and local talents are talents. Talents should work hand in hand. I'm pleased to see that many enterprises have combined local workforce as a mainstay and supplemented with the top talents and create more economic benefit. What question has not been answered? The lowest 10 percentile talents income level. You have raised your question. Secretary, any supplements? President, as I said in my main reply, only very few applications for extension of stay has been received. We don't have meaningful statistics to share. When a certain number of applications has piled up, we will make public the data in due course. Mr. John Ng, President, the Top Talent Pass scheme is one of the most aggressive and useful measures implemented by this term of the government. It will replenish our labor force and give us economic impetus. Now, housing is also important. We have heard that some talents would like to buy a house in Hong Kong. However, there is difficulty in cross-boundary capital movement. So can we have some measures to help these top talents to buy flats in Hong Kong? Secretary, President, according to our survey, on arrival, most talents would choose to rent a flat. Of course, a very small number of them have purchased a property in Hong Kong. Talents, especially those with children, do purchase flats in Hong Kong after settling down. Now, if the majority of their capital is in the mainland, then cross-boundary capital transfer will have to follow the country's rule. But we understand that there is such a need. However, this is not just our purview. We need to comply with the capital transfer requirements implemented by the country. But we will keep paying attention to the needs of the top talents and provide facilitations. Thank you. Professor Chen Wing-Kwong. Thank you, President. Suitable talents can supplement our growth, so we support the Top Talents Pass scheme. However, according to the main reply, since the scheme was launched in the end of 2022, 75,000 talents have arrived in Hong Kong. That is a considerable number. Has the government assessed whether we have sufficient high-end job vacancies to accommodate these top talents so that there will not be underutilization of the talents while ensuring that the upward mobility of our local workforce will not be hindered? Secretary, thank you, Professor Chen. We have about 3.5 million workforce. 75,000 is a small percentage in the total number. Second, our unemployment rate has hovered at around 3%. It shows that our labor market is vying for talents. Now, several months ago, we published the Manpower Projection 2023 with a projection of manpower shortage up to 2028. The shortfall will be 180,000 people. That has already taken into consideration our talent admission scheme and the supplementary labor scheme. In other words, to maintain our economic momentum, we need to rely on our local workforce. We want to increase the labor force participation rate. However, we need to plug the shortfall by way of talent admission schemes so as to replenish our local workforce. This will bring about more impetus to our economic development momentum. Thank you.
Last question seeking an oral reply. Mr. Ben Chen. Thank you, President. It's been 1 year since the government implemented improvement measures to alleviate the congestion problem at the 3 road harbour crossings, or RHCs, and the road sections in their vicinity. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1. of the average daily vehicular flows of each of the 3 RHCs at present, and the average percentages of their vehicular flows during the morning and evening peak hours to the total vehicular flows, whether it has assessed if it's necessary to fine-tune the definition of peak periods of the 3 RHCs in view of their current traffic volumes, such as deferring the peak periods of the Western Harbour Crossing, or WHC, so that motorists will set off earlier as a result. If so, of the details and the timetable, if not the measures in place to resolve the congestion problem at the 3 RHCs during peak periods. 2. As it is learned that there are frequent traffic congestions at the entrance and exit of the WHC and the road sections in its vicinity, and that the government proposed last year to construct an additional lane at the exit of the WHC on Hong Kong Island towards Central and Sheung of the progress and timetable of the project concerned, if the government will not take forward the project of the short, medium, and long-term measures in place to resolve the relevant congestion problem. And 3. Whether it has plans to grant the toll plaza sites at the 3 RHCs for the provision of charging stations and park and ride facilities, or to the bus companies for non-fare box revenue purposes. If so, the timetable, if not the reasons for that. Secretary for Transport and Logistics. President, the government has implemented time-varying tolls at the 3 road harbour crossings, or RHCs, to suppress and divert the excessive traffic demand of cross-harbour private cars during peak hours, so as to rationalize the cross-harbour traffic flow and better utilize the capacity of the 3 RHCs. The government has been closely monitoring the traffic situation at the 3 RHCs since the implementation of the new tolls in December 2023. With the cooperation of motorists and their adjustments to commuting pattern, the overall traffic queues and congestion at the tunnel portals have been alleviated, thus effectively achieving the policy objectives and expectations. Having consulted the Transport Department, my reply to the question raised by Mr. Ben Chen is as follows. 1. During the period from December 2023 to November 2024, the total traffic volume of the 3 RHCs was similar to that before the implementation of time-varying tolls, averaging about 272,000 vehicles per day. The distribution of traffic flows across the 3 RHCs was as follows. Traffic flow at the Western Harbour Crossing, or WHC, increased by approximately 18% to about 103,000 vehicles. Traffic flow at the Cross Harbour Tunnel, or CHT, dropped by about 9% to about 95,000 vehicles, and traffic flow at the Eastern Harbour Crossing, or EHC, also decreased by about 7% to 73,000 vehicles. Our data shows that after the implementation of the new tolls, the daily cross-harbour traffic remained stable without inducing additional traffic. Meanwhile, the cross-harbour traffic was more evenly distributed among the 3 RHCs, thereby better utilizing the capacity of each tunnel. Apart from geographical diversion of traffic, the new tolls also facilitated redistribution of traffic among different time periods. The proportion of peak hour traffic out of the total daily traffic of the 3 RHCs dropped slightly by 1% from 38% before the implementation of time-varying tolls to 37% after the implementation of time-varying tolls. Generally speaking, the traffic flow at the 3 RHCs during peak time slots registered a decrease, while there was an overall increase in traffic flows of 3 RHCs outside the peak time slots, reflecting a change in the commuting habits of some motorists who chose to travel during the time slots with lower tolls. The above situation is in line with our expectation. In the past, the traffic flow at the CHT was high throughout the day, while the WHC, which has the highest capacity, had not been well utilized for most of the time in the day. The current tolls have driven an effective utilization of the capacities of the 3 RHCs and rationalization of the unevenly distributed traffic caused by the tolls in the past. The congestion at both the CHT and EHC during peak hours was alleviated, and the non-cross-harbour traffic condition near the tunnel portals had also improved significantly. During normal and off-peak time slots, which account for nearly 80% of the day, the overall cross-harbour traffic was significantly smoother than before. This has brought benefits to bus passengers, private car drivers, public transport trades, commercial vehicle transport trades, and the community as a whole crossing the harbour. We have assessed the potential impact on cross-harbour traffic if the start time of peak time slot at the WHC is deferred. According to our data at present, the traffic flow of the 3 RHCs has already exceeded their capacities, and hence queues emerged during the transitional time slot when entering the morning peak time slot. If the peak time slot for WHC was postponed, it would be tantamount to lowering the tolls during the transitional time slot, which is expected to induce additional traffic flow and attract some vehicles to divert to the WHC, thus lengthening the queues at the WHC during that time slot. The TD is now collecting and compiling the cross-harbour traffic data for the whole year of 2024 for the purpose of analysing and reviewing the existing arrangements for peak time slots for each tunnel, which is expected to be completed by the middle of this year. Subject to the outcome of the review, the TD will follow up in accordance with the toll adjustment mechanism under the existing legislation. That is, if the cross-harbour traffic demand frequently exceeded tunnel capacity and resulted in congestion, and if the resulting traffic queues continuously affected critical junctions or interchanges, thereby blocking non-tunnel traffic or traffic across districts, the TD will be able to consider adjusting the tolls of the RHCs for private cars during the peak time slots in accordance with the mechanism. 2. To enhance the capacity of Hong Kong Island exit section of the WHC and reduce the need for vehicle weaving, thereby smoothing the traffic flow at the tunnel portal in its vicinity, the TD and the Highways Department are actively pursuing the construction of an additional lane at the tunnel portal on the Hong Kong Island side towards Central and Sheung Wan. The relevant construction works commenced last month for completion estimated to be the middle of next year. Upon completion of the works, we expect that the traffic at Hong Kong Island exit of the WHC will improve, thus alleviating traffic condition at the southbound of the WHC during peak time slot. 3. The government will make use of the freed up space following the implementation of HKE toll at the 3 RHCs to improve public transport services and traffic at tunnel portals. These include improvements on bus pickup and drop-off arrangements, as well as widening and straightening of traffic lanes to facilitate smoother pedestrian and vehicular flows near the tunnel portals. It's noteworthy that the freed up space following the implementation of HKE toll at the 3 RHCs are mainly located in the fast lane areas, so the provision of appropriate vehicular accesses or pedestrian crossing facilities should be premised on road safety. The government will consider options to tie in with the development of the surrounding areas as far as traffic conditions permit. Thank you, President. Mr. Ben Chen. President, the government does not have to make a decision so early. It's been just a year since the implementation, right? It says that by deferring the peak time slots, it will induce greater traffic. Well, it is too early for us to make this judgment. Well, according to what the government says, I think the government is being too reckless in making this conclusion. Well, even if you lower the tolls during nighttime to $20, it will not induce greater traffic. According to the government, if the tunnel capacity or the demand for traffic exceeded the tunnel capacity, you might adjust the tolls upward. In 2011, the toll at the WHC was $50. In 2019, the toll was $25. What is your question, Mr. Ben Chen? Well, my question is, will the government not consider adjusting the peak period if the government isn't going to do so, what is the point of having the adjustment mechanism in place? Secretary, I thank Mr. Chen for the comment. As mentioned in my major reply, we are reviewing the mechanism and we are now collecting data on it. We will be very careful as we review the mechanism. We will see if the traffic flow has exceeded the tunnel capacity and also if the critical junctions near the tunnels are affected. As mentioned, during the transitional time slots before the peak period at the WHC, we see that there has been higher traffic. We will review the transitional time slots tolls as well as peak hours tolls. This is part of our review. And during our review process, we will look at the matters with members of this council. According to our experience, during peak hours, in the morning or in the evening at the WHC, well, the peak periods start 20 minutes later than that of the EHC as well as the CHT. So any adjustments that we are going to make, we will have to strike a balance. Thank you. Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, President. Well, traffic is not under the purview of the TLB only. It's also under the purview of the Development Bureau. We see some results in rationalization of traffic among the three RHCs. It takes us 15 to 20 minutes more to travel now. Well, no matter how we try to divert the traffic, well, according to the government, say in the Chao, there will be a fourth tunnel. If Tuen Mun Chap Lop Kok Ling is not going to solve the congestion problem at Won Chu Road, even with the fourth tunnel, it will not solve the congestion problems in all the road harbour crossings. When you calculate the traffic flow, are you sticking to an outdated estimation method? How are you going to adjust your computing or calculation method so that we are confident with your method and that we know the method will be accurate? Secretary, we try to divert traffic with the three road harbour crossings and we try to build new infrastructure. As we review the traffic demand, we stick to the traffic computing model. We look at it in depth. We look at the traffic flow in each district. We also look at the commuting points of people, the starting point as well as the end point. We use the matrix as well as the computing model to come up with the data. Take the three RHCs as an example. Apart from looking at our computing model, we also look at actual data and figures. As you said, we cannot be too rigid in this regard. You mentioned about Tuen Mun as well as the northwestern part of the new territories. We look at the planned infrastructure as well as the estimated traffic flow as we adopt the computing model. Well, you mentioned about the Tuen Mun Chap Lop Kok Ling. In the recent LegCo meeting, I mentioned that it helps divert traffic, but for important connecting roads like Won Chu Road and Long Wun Road, we are trying to implement some improvement measures in the local districts. We also try to introduce bypasses so that cars don't have to go through the critical junctions. We try to improve the traffic as best as we can. Which part of the question is not answered? I asked about how the government will enhance the computing model and calculation method. Anything to add, Secretary? President, as mentioned, we continue to update our model. In the northwestern part of New Territories, we see development, and there are changes continuously to the traffic demand as well as traffic flow. We will update our computing model as needed to see how we can better implement traffic management measures. Mr. Chang Hok-fong, it looks like the diversion effect is not significant after the time-varying tolls are implemented from 38% to 37% in terms of the peak hour traffic. Will the Secretary adjust instead the non-peak hours tolls from $30 to $20 to yield better diversion effects? Secretary, I thank Mr. Chen for the questions. If you look at the percentage of traffic during peak hours, well, you cannot adopt that figures entirely because you have to look at the overall traffic flow throughout the day. Take the CHT as an example. The whole day traffic has dropped. If you look at the peak hours, the traffic has increased from 31% to 33%. We see that the overall traffic has increased, but with the diversion, we have yielded results. So it looks like the traffic has increased during the peak hours, but you also have to look at the overall traffic flows throughout the day. Our mechanism allows us to review the toll as well as the starting point as well as end point of the peak periods. So we will adopt these indicators to see how we can strike the best balance. Thank you. Mr. Kennedy Wong. Thank you, President. About the congestion problem at the 3 road harbour crossings, well, I live on Hong Kong Island. I see that many mainland vehicles use the tunnels to travel to Hong Kong Island with the southbound travel scheme for vehicles. How will you let these mainland drivers know about the congestion conditions or situations as well as the toll levels at different periods? Will you make use of technology to do so? Secretary, I thank Mr. Wong for the questions. These are things that we have to think about with the implementation of HKE tolls. People are using the vehicle or toll tags. We see that at the Tate Can Tunnel or at the EHT or other important road sections, when motorists have to decide which tunnel they should use, they can refer to our real-time information display panels. Say for motorists who come to Hong Kong from the mainland, they might go through the Tate Can Tunnel, they might use the Tuen Mun Road or other road harbour crossings. They may refer to the real-time information we provide. We also provide the estimated journey time so that they can make a better plan. For mainland vehicles that come to Hong Kong, they have to be aware that there is the HKE tolls in place, so that they should also have the information about the road condition will place emphasis and importance to the education part. Thank you. Mr. Stanley we know that the government has implemented time-varying tolls to divert traffic. The government has also been encouraging the public to use public transport. Why can't the government step up encouraging the public to use the public transport by greatly reducing the fares of public transport as well as the tolls? Secretary. I thank Mr. for the question. Mr. argument is in line with our government's policies. As we rolled out the time-varying tolls at the 3 road harbour crossings, we want to showcase the efficiency-first principle, and that we want to prioritize public transportation. So there is great significance in relation to our downward adjustment of tolls levels. We are also introducing bus-only lanes so that buses can use those lanes. We also have introduced park and ride facilities. In the future, we will make use of the opportunities brought by the 3 road harbour crossings. Thank you.
Members' motion with no legislation